You are listening to the Disney Dream Girls, an unofficial Disney Theme Parks podcast, and this is show number 462 for Sunday, the 9th of July, 2023.
Where dreams begin.
Hello and welcome to this week's Disney Dream Girls. Hello there, everyone. And I have with me a couple of guests we've not had on the show for what seems like an eternity. But I would like to welcome back Kat and Lewis from Dis Down Under. Hello, guys.
G'day, Michelle. How are you going?
G'day, Michelle.
Always good to see you both.
I know, and you. And always good to be recording with you, catching up on Disney goss.
Lots of Disney goss to go through as we are hitting July. We are hitting the busy season for people who have children anyway, that want to go away in the school holidays. It's already begun over in the United States. Alas, us in the UK, our summer holidays don't begin for another 12 working days. Not that I'm counting at all to when I finish on the 25th. But yeah, when did the children in Australia have their big break? Is that over Christmas and January?
Yeah, that's right. So they usually break up sort of around the mid to late December, depending on which state you're in, because the eastern states tend to run about a week earlier than the west, than us in WA. But yeah, usually about the 16th or so of December, the kids are sort of winding up and heading off on holidays, and then they head back to school late January, early February usually.
So is this really a typically busy month for Australians going overseas?
Definitely. It makes airfares in and out of Australia pretty expensive around that time of year. But, it depends on where you're going, I guess, as to how expensive it might be. I know that a lot of people that try and, go back to see rallies in Europe or in the UK, that they tend to get hit with some big airfares. I think one of your colleagues was looking at going back last Christmas, wasn't he, Lou, and decided not to because airfares were quite prohibitive at that time of year.
Go to Dubai and then you put that off until late January?
Yeah, just to try and get the cheaper airfares, because it can make a huge difference, especially when you're flying as a whole family.
Well, I don't remember it too bad, like when you and I went to China for a couple of Christmases and going to the UK. I don't remember the prices being that bad back then.
I think that we're sort of going through that stage where people are getting back into travelling, and airfares generally are pretty expensive. Have you found that, Michelle, with your travels since the pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. The trip that I made, at Easter, oh my word, the cost of the airfare was ridiculous. But for my next upcoming trip that I'm doing this summer, because I booked it out a lot more in advance, I think we booked all the flights and everything last December, we were able to get some pretty reasonable flights. Okay, I'm still talking four figures for us to get from the UK over to the USA, but it's better than double than what it was at Easter.
Wow, that's incredible to think that double, because airfares are already pretty expensive.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
So thinking about you guys and your travel, you've not been away since the onset of COVID and the global shutdown. So are you starting now to start thinking a little bit more about travelling out of Australia?
Definitely. So we are doing a couple of cruises at the end of the year because the Wonder is coming down under. And so we've got a couple of just Australian-based ones, and we've got one that heads out to New Caledonia, which is going to be kind of neat because it's going to go over that New Year period. So we'll have New Year's on the boat, which we're pretty excited for. But we were doing a bit of chatting, and where Lewis's birthday falls, so our birthdays are about 2.5, 3 weeks apart. And so that's kind of convenient. So we thought, well, I wonder if we can get away, because Lewis's birthday for once is not going to be during either school holidays or Easter. For some reason or other, it seems to coincide with one or both of those things. And so next year we thought about it and thought, well, maybe it's time to get back out onto the international travels and get back up to Japan, because in particular, Tokyo Disney's got a lot more offerings that have opened up since we last went in 2017. I believe.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure. That's terrible, isn't it? And so there's been a couple of things that have opened up that we can try that are new. And also, you don't get to try every snack while you're in the park. So, you've got to allow a lot of time for snacking in that particular park. So we thought we'd do that. And our thoughts are generally, when we go into the Asian region, that it's kind of convenient for us to fly through Hong Kong. And so we thought we'd give it a go flying through Hong Kong. Not quite ready to head back into Shanghai yet. Otherwise, I think we probably would have done the triple because pretty keen to get back out there and experiencing some Disney.
Although I must admit, Shanghai, they haven't really got anything new there then for the last time we went there. I know that the Zootopia area is being built. But
it's not quite open yet, is it?
Yeah, not quite open yet. So there's nothing new there for us. But obviously with Hong Kong Disneyland, we hadn't done the Ant-Man and Wasp attraction. By the time we get there, the Frozen area should be open, and the castle, the new castle is
that's up and running.
So there's a lot to be seen there, and then Tokyo, there's a lot of stuff we haven't seen either. So good times.
Yeah. So like I said, we try and make the most of being in the region in terms of going to a couple of parks while we're up there. But also this time I think we're going to squeeze in a little bit of Universal, which we haven't done Universal since we were last on the East Coast in America. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting.
So for those of our listeners that might not have heard, how many times have you done the Asian parks to give them a bit of a flavour for how familiar you are with them?
We have done 3 trips up there. So 2 were to Shanghai and Hong Kong, and 1 was to Tokyo and Hong Kong. Did we? No, we didn't do the triple, did we? It was, definitely just Tokyo and Hong Kong. So traditionally we've gone up for about 2 weeks. The Shanghai trips we did at Christmas time. So we would leave here on sort of late Christmas night, early Boxing Day morning, and head out and enjoy sort of over that New Year period up in Shanghai. It's cold. I'm not going to deny that. But to be honest, we had some beautiful days while we were up there. You would be sometimes on some days going from cup of hot chocolate to cup of hot chocolate. But it was still a really pleasant experience. I thought that as a winter park, it works quite well.
And even though it was winter, we still went on their rapids ride, which was insane.
It was probably one of our more foolish moves, but it was good. And they've got some different stuff up there as well. So they've got this adventure thing where you kind of get put into a harness, like you're going rock climbing or something like that, and you're tethered by a rope that runs along a rail, and you do all these little adventure paths. So that was kind of cool as well. But yeah, the weather was good enough that we could enjoy that kind of thing, even though it was very, very cold.
So thinking about the trip part for Hong Kong, how do you select what hotel you're going to stay in?
Well, the first time we were really keen on staying in the Disneyland hotel, primarily for position, but also because we looked at the prices, and in comparison to the parks in America, we could afford to pay for their, what do they call it, concierge level, or club level, sorry. And so we did that. And because you're only staying for a couple of nights as well, because Hong Kong itself is not a big park, and there's not a lot of food and beverage options within walking distance of the park either once it's shut, and it doesn't stay open particularly late. So for us, having access to the club level meant that we could go and enjoy the club lounge once the park had shut down, and rather than having to go further afield to go and find dinner for the night.
So you hit on a few things that have happened at Hong Kong. The big one for a lot of people is that the castle has been enlarged. What else are you really excited about going back to and seeing and experiencing there?
Oh, definitely Ant-Man and the Wasp, because we just missed out on that. And, people have listened to us in the past. They know that I'm a big, big fan of those shooter kind of games. So it's basically going to be, it's the same ride vehicle, isn't it, as the Buzz Lightyear?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And so it's going to be kind of neat to go and do something like that. Their Ironman ride, which is in the same vicinity, is outstanding. It's like Star Tours, but just purely it's got one. It doesn't have the multiple versions, so each time you ride it, it is going to be the same. But it's great. It's a really great use of that ride vehicle as well.
That's an interesting idea, thinking about globally the Walt Disney realm of parks, and you think about Star Tours, particularly in Disneyland, it might not fit forever in Tomorrowland because we also have Galaxy's Edge now. So perhaps we could start petitioning Disney to bring over that to Tomorrowland.
Oh, definitely. And if they did that and expanded it, then perhaps there is scope to have some more storylines written in and have that randomization in there as well.
It wouldn't really make sense. So if you're talking Disneyland, it wouldn't really make sense because, having Ant-Man and the Wasp there and then having all the Marvel stuff over in California Adventure, you've still got disjointed parks. So having a Star Wars ride in the same park that there is a Galaxy's Edge kind of makes a little bit more sense. And then you get away with selling the merchandise for, the non-Galaxy's Edge merchandise in like the area where Star Tours is, which I'm assuming is what they do.
That's a fair point. That is a fair point. But yeah, I think that there is scope to roll out some of these different attractions. And like you say, Michelle, Star Tours, it's a beloved attraction. But now that there's Galaxy's Edge, which is sort of like bigger, better, faster, it's one of those things that you do sort of wonder whether there might be a time limit to Star Tours being in California.
Haven't they just updated Star Tours again to include some like Mandalorian stuff in there?
Maybe.
Or I think if it hasn't happened, I think it's happening.
Interesting.
Because it's one of those things where you can just constantly update it. So it's always going to be new.
Well, could you also have it so that you have two entrances and have because I'd imagine there's multiple ride vehicles in the complex and have something running one thing and something running another?
Possibly. You could possibly do that.
But yeah, just have two separate entrances, exits, and that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, or just put a new version of Star Tours over in California Adventure and have the Iron Man attraction put in there. Although they have to completely redo it because the one in Hong Kong is set in Hong Kong, which would make absolutely no sense in California.
Ah, yes, that's true. Because it's got I don't know whether you've seen any video of it, Michelle, but it's got a part where you do a flyover, basically, of an animated version of Hong Kong, which is really, really neat. But, I mean, they've customized that for, trying to think. They customized it in what's the flying one? Goodness, I'm having a mind blank.
Soarin'.
Yeah, they customized that, don't they?
Yeah.
So that you're going through the region where you are located.
Yeah, so the last scene is generally the park and fireworks and stuff like that.
So it's not impossible.
What?
No?
No, I think it's unlikely, just given that the location. Like if they were to do it, they'd have to put it into the Marvel area because I couldn't imagine you'd have a Marvel thing in the an area that's not the Marvel area.
Well, I don't know because I've not seen the Marvel area in DCA. So maybe we can reconvene after my August trip and we can talk more about that redesign because I do know in DCA they've just opened up San Francisco and elements are getting released over the summer. So that would be quite interesting. We could maybe tie in with that with our theoretical addition of new attractions.
Absolutely. They do have It's a Small World at Hong Kong as well. So that's quite lovely because once you get that song in your head, it never comes out. They do have something a little bit different, don't they? Oh, no, their Winnie the Pooh is the same. But what other attraction am I thinking of, Lewis, that's just a little bit different?
Well, Jungle Cruise is different.
Yes, thank you.
Mystic Manor is different. And is it Grizzly Gulch, the roller coaster?
Yes. So going back to what Lewis was saying, the Jungle Cruise is very different. It's almost like a cross between the Jungle Cruise and then it's got elements from, is it the studio tour that you do over in Paris?
Yeah, it's got a set stunt piece kind of thing.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. So it's quite different from what you would experience in other parks. So that's a good point. Grizzly Gulch is kind of a thing of its own, isn't it? Like it's almost
It's their Big Thunder Mountain, I think, but it's different because it like goes backwards at points and stuff like that. So yeah,
and it's got a very different storyline. There's some meddlesome bears.
Gotta love some meddlesome bears. It brings about the story. So you've spoken about attractions, and you did hint that the food there isn't as spectacular. Is there anything food or merch-wise that you'd be particularly excited about getting from Hong Kong?
I haven't actually looked at the recent merchandise because I do find that with the parks up there, it does tend to be very seasonal. So if we started looking now, I don't think that the same items would necessarily be available by the time we start looking at heading over. In terms of food-wise, next to Mystic Manor, which Lewis briefly spoke about, which is kind of like a cross between... maybe it's not so similar to Remy, but it does have that trackless system. And it's nothing like the Haunted Mansions that we've got in the other park, but it is a little bit sort of spooky in places. So next door to that is an Explorers Club restaurant, and it has about 3 or 4 different types of cuisine that you can get from various parts of Asia. And we've always enjoyed going in there and having a bit of lunch because it's something substantial, but it's very simple, tasty food as well. Like you can get things like satay sticks and did we have some, just trying to think, did we have some bao buns and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so. It's just, it's pretty standard kind of, different Asian cuisines, but very, very tasty. Not the kind of usual quick service you get, so not like burgers and stuff like that.
No, that's true. And they do have delicious caramel popcorn at Hong Kong Disney, so we will be having some of that. That's for sure.
So lots of things to think about. You've obviously got your trip dates locked in. Are you able to book a hotel and park tickets this far in advance?
No, that was something that I had completely forgotten about, or it's changed. So my understanding is that it's a 3-month booking window that you've got. So we can't book yet. It's some time before we can book, which makes me a little bit nervous because you know what I'm like, Michelle. I'm a bit of a planner. I like to be able to plan and book ahead. So that makes me a little bit nervous. But, the great thing about Hong Kong Disney is that if you don't end up with on-site accommodation, it's not going to ruin your trip because the parks aren't open particularly late and the train service is great. So there's a train that goes from the city out to the island and it runs very regularly. And it's got a branch that comes off it. So you do have to change get off and change at a station, but there's actually a specific Disneyland train that runs on this little arm of the line. So it's good. And so it would make it accessible if people did want to stay in the city and then just catch the train out there.
Makes sense.
And being it's only one park, you could do it, just a day trip out there if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably want 2 days at a minimum. But yeah, Lewis is right. 2 days is probably not necessary. But the thing that I quite like about being out there for, say, 2 or 3 nights is that it's actually really beautiful where it's set up. So you've got really beautiful greenery outside of the parks. When you're walking to and from your hotel, you've got these beautiful paths that are just sculpted gardens and lots of greenery. You've got just outside the Disneyland hotel, there's actually would you call it more of a wharf than a jetty?
Yeah. And
so you can go and walk out onto that. There's paths running alongside the ocean. It's really pretty and it's you're getting to see a lot of different things in your time while you're staying there outside of going to the parks themselves.
But there's not just, we stayed at the Disneyland Hotel the first 2 times. Mm-hmm. The third time we went there was the Explorers Hotel.
But yeah, honestly, walking along the ocean and stuff like that, we just used to walk back to the hotel and, drop off some shopping or something like that because it's so close. And it's just so wonderful having the ocean right there, literally outside. It's on the doorstep of the hotel. It's quite extraordinary as a park.
One day.
Easy.
One day I will get there.
Yeah, and look, Cathay Pacific and stuff like that to fly to if you do come down to Australia, it probably wouldn't be so bad to fly Cathay and then do a stop off at Hong Kong.
That's what my daughter did when she went out to Australia. So that's a something for consideration for next summer. So we've talked about Hong Kong. You've mentioned you're going to go up to Tokyo, and I know from other listeners to the show who have recently been to Tokyo, they have gone gaga for it and absolutely said it is every Disney fan's dream of a park, for food, for merch, unique attractions, for theming. So how did you go about firstly planning this trip to get your organisation in place for the Tokyo element?
For this particular trip, it's going to be a lot easier because we've been there now. Our first trip to Japan was a lot of watching videos, a lot of Lewis listened to a lot of podcasts.
Well, I listened to the only Tokyo-based podcast, TDR Explorer.
Well, English speaking.
Yeah, English speaking one. Yeah.
And so he spent a lot of time listening to TDR Explorer, and there was a lot of thought that had to go into exactly how much time we were going to need, because it's a funny place. So when you travel to Japan as a someone who only speaks English, it is not difficult, but there's a lot of things that in other parts of Asia, so in Shanghai and Hong Kong, they do things multilingual. And so you will always have that aspect of like the apps are available in the Australian store. So we could just download the app for Shanghai or the app for Hong Kong, and we're able to use it very similar to what you could in the parks in the US, in Paris. It made our lives very easy. But the Tokyo app wasn't the same, was it, Lou?
No, it's very, because the majority of the people who go to Tokyo Disneyland are Japanese. They haven't really put a lot of time or effort into making it easier for tourists to be able to get the information and navigate the parks. So I would recommend, if you can stay on site, that staying on site will make it a lot easier for you. Because I think when we were staying at the Disneyland Hotel there, we could instantly do the park hopping from day one. Mm-hmm. But I think if you aren't doing that, then, and again, this information is probably dated because it was years ago we did it, but we were able to park for day one. But otherwise, if you got like a 4-day ticket, you had to do one park one day, one park the next day, and then you could park hop from the third day. I think that's how it worked. Mm-hmm. So that it was a lot easier staying on site. And obviously we had people who could explain stuff to us there. The biggest headache was their photo pass, because you couldn't do the photo pass unless you were like lived in Japan. And so we had,
because you had to get it sent to you on disc.
Yeah. And so we knew
it was
someone.
So bizarre. This is 2018. Yeah. No, 2017.
Yeah. Well, the weird thing is with Japan is that it whenever you think about Japan or you see Japan, it looks like such a technological place. But really it was backwards in a lot of ways. And like, even using credit cards and stuff like that could be a bit difficult.
Yeah, that's true with PayPass and things. Yeah, it was more of an insert your card still, whereas we're using the tap and go quite regularly in most places that we were traveling to at that point. That's a good point.
So we're interested to see if that's still the case when we go back now, like years later.
I dare say the tap and go probably was implemented a little bit more because of the pandemic and, doing things as touchless, as they like to say. So perhaps that'll be a factor. But yeah, I mean, for us in that first trip, it was about trying to work out how much time we needed. We also didn't have a huge amount of time in terms of annual leave. So we only had about 2 weeks in total. So we only did a short stint in Hong Kong and then went across to Tokyo and actually spent time in the city before going to Tokyo Disneyland Resort and spending some time there before flying out. So it was a bit of a whirlwind tour, whereas this time we are spending a little bit more time in Japan. We're sort of forming some ideas as to how that's going to look, because we have to also consider that unfortunately, while we might not be traveling over Easter or school holidays, it's going to be Golden Week. And do you want to explain what that is, Lewis?
So Golden Week is kind of like a national public holiday, and a lot of people in Japan use that time to travel. So there's a lot of people traveling into Tokyo, a lot of people traveling out of Tokyo. So it's going to be a very hectic time while we're there.
I think it's traditionally as well a time where a lot of people travel back to their hometown.
Yeah. So, yeah, it should be interesting. I mean, we know it's probably not the best time to go there, but we kind of like wanted to do it because it bridged our birthdays, and so to have both of our birthdays and be able to celebrate them on holidays was an important thing to us. And it was kind of like, well, Golden Week's happening, but oh well, we'll just have a crack and see how it goes. If it's terrible, we just won't do it again.
And last time we were there around your birthday, we managed to luck it because cherry blossoms obviously aren't a predictable thing. They don't have a set date that they open, but we actually lucked it so that we could see the cherry blossoms in both Tokyo, and we went south to Gatemba, and we got some great pictures. It's something so beautiful, like, seeing Mount Fuji with a cherry blossom behind you, and it's quite pretty.
And actually seeing Mount Fuji, because apparently the cloud cover there is usually obscuring the mountain, so we got very lucky to get there and actually see it.
And I guess this time, in terms of the planning, it is going to be a bit easier because there is an English version of the Tokyo Disney Resort app available, so we've got that advantage in terms of when we're on site and doing things. But it's one of those things where we know about how much time we need. We know that some things are going to be difficult to get into because there's going to be what attractions opening. So Beauty and the Beast has opened already, so we'll be able to experience that for the first time ourselves. But there's an attraction that's opening about a week before we get there.
Isn't it like a new port or something like that with some different attractions that are there?
Yeah, it's a new part of the... Yeah. So there's basically going to be a third park. Is it not as a whole?
No, it's still part of the existing Disney Sea.
Oh, so it is. Okay, so it's an extension of Disney Sea. Is it? It's not their Frozen one, is it?
I think it is. Yeah.
Goodness, my memory's just terrible today. Too many things on the mind. But so I mean, in terms of, we're going to have to try and prioritize the newer stuff for sure. But I'm really looking forward to going back and seeing
Fantasy Springs.
Thank you, Lewis.
Yeah.
That was like wedged in sideways.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to going back to see some of the things that we really enjoyed that you can only do in Tokyo, Lou.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to go to do their pirates because we didn't do their pirates last time. But yeah, I mean, things like Big Thunder Mountain,
Pooh's Honey Hunt?
No, Pooh's Honey Hunt. We need to do Pooh's Honey Hunt. Well, once. I mean, we don't need to do it over and over again like we have done in the past. No. Haunted Mansion, we don't really need to do that. Yeah, because it's pretty much the same as Disneyland's. So, I mean, we'll do it if there's like no line, but I think, focusing on the stuff we haven't done is going to be the main thing.
Also, we need to do a little bit more research on Disney Premier Access, which is something that they offer at Tokyo Disneyland, which is a fee-based service. So you can, it allows guests to select designated times to enjoy their experiences with a shorter wait time. So we probably need to look more into that to see what that's about.
Yeah, I wonder if they've changed, because when we were there last time, the shows, there'd often be like more interest in people doing the shows than they had spaces available. So there was two ways of getting to the shows. One was this lottery thing where you'd go into this little area, and they had machines there, and you'd like scan your ticket, and then if you got the lottery, you'd win a pass to it, or you could go and sit and wait to get into the theater. But that would be like 2 or 3 hours of waiting to go to a show. So it makes me wonder if the shows are now like Premier Access and people pay for them.
Perhaps indeed. We'll have to do a little bit of research into that. So I mean, that's the thing. Like, you can go to a park and a lot can change in a fairly short time. So it's going to be exciting, that's for sure.
And I like the idea that you're pre-planning what are the headliner ones for you, because if you've been there once before, you've got that sort of reassurance of knowing your way around, and you know which ones you want to highlight and go on first. But if the queue's short in a particular other one, well, you can have a quick sneaky little ride on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that we probably did a little bit of, but I'd like to do more of, is the snacking, because there were so many good snacks to enjoy over there, Michelle.
I love a good snack. It's my way now of eating. I have moved away from all these fancy smancy 2-hour chunks out of my day. Snack and go. Oh yes, tell me what are your favourite snacks in Tokyo?
There was this thing, it was a gyoza hot dog, which was kind of like, the outside wasn't really like a gyoza wrapper. It was more like a steamed bun, but the inside was like the inside of gyoza. And it was like hot dog length. And it came with this great dipping sauce, and it was delicious. And, to be honest, it made the best breakfast food. It was quite yummy, and just had it was just a nice. It was probably a little bit more than what the rest of their snacks were, but it was tasty as and worth hunting down. There was just some really simple things, like they had a sausage done with like a sticky rice. Do you remember that one, Lou? They had like a tortilla that had a sausage and cheese in it. That sounds really, really ridiculously simple, but it was tasty as. Lots and lots of options they didn't have Dole Whip per se, but they had lots of different flavors of ice cream, and you could get certain flavors in certain areas of the parks. And sometimes they had versions that were set up like little sundaes. So there was a churro one that you had, Lou, that had cornflakes in it, if I remember correctly.
Cornflakes are good, gave it a bit of crunch. It was nice.
Okay. And so there's that kind of thing. There's some really kind of specific things to the parks that you won't see anywhere else, like the green alien mochi that you could get over near Toy Story Land that, looked like those little green aliens and were too cute. Like, you almost didn't want to eat them because they were too cute to look at. It was quite nice. But they do have a couple of nice sit-down restaurants, particularly in the Disney Sea side of things, don't they, Lou?
Yeah, but going back to the snacks, there's heaps of popcorn. Like there's popcorn.
Oh, pardon me. Yeah. How could I overlook the popcorn?
Yes, there's like sweet popcorn, there's savory popcorn. But when you're talking snacks and talking Japan, one of the important things is in Japan, it's considered rude to walk and eat. So if you are getting snacks and stuff like that, you're supposed to get your snacks, sit down somewhere or stand somewhere, eat your snack, throw the rubbish in the bin, and then continue on your way. So a little bit of a cultural difference to what you would see in most parks.
True. That's very true. Although people did tend to eat their popcorn as they walked.
Yeah, I guess maybe there's a
maybe it's a bit different because it's more Americanized maybe in the parks.
Yeah, not sure. But, a lot of good sit-down places as well. I mean, there were actual restaurants that you could book in and go and have a full meal. And then some lounges that you go to as well. And, yeah, it's just abundance of food.
And right next to it wasn't inside the parks, but park adjacent. What was the name of that little shopping centre that had heaps of food options as well? It was Escapari or something. Expiari. Thank you. I was close. That wasn't bad for a memory. And that was somewhere that we went and had, I think we went and had some ramen or something like that over there, just to have something that was a little bit different than park food. But tell you what, you could do what you like doing, Michelle, and just snack your way through the parks and not have to waste your time having a proper sit-down meal and enjoy heaps of different flavours.
Sounds good to me. That's perfect. Just thinking of being obviously from an English-speaking background, how difficult is it to navigate the park as obviously it's not an English-speaking country?
It's not a problem. I think that the biggest difficulty when we've travelled to all of the Disney parks, I think we've probably had more of a language barrier I think there was just one time in Shanghai that we were trying to set up the photo pass and we couldn't. It was a tricky little system that they had with their photo pass at that time. And so we're trying to load, like we brought our little car, trying to load it on. And the cast members were really good at finding someone that was able to help us, but we weren't able to just talk to the first person that we saw. But I mean, if that's the biggest barrier that we've had in our travels, that's pretty good, I think. And in Disneyland, so Tokyo Disneyland, I don't remember having any issues whatsoever. I think that they are really used to having a wide variety of nationalities, visiting the parks. And so they're really good at communicating without words if they're not able to speak English themselves. And most people are bilingual. They're not like us that just speak English.
I think if you're look like you're a person from England or Australia or America, then there's the assumption that you're going to speak English. So it's kind of easy for travelers. But then if you're someone who is also, a person who looks like they're from England, Australia or America, but they speak German or Italian or another language, it's a lot harder for them because the people see them and just assume they speak English, but then they may not. So
that's such a good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as language barriers go, I think that there's always someone within reach that will be able to help you with any issues that you might be having. And to be honest, all of the shows, even if you don't see them in English, you're still going to enjoy them because you know the characters, you know the stories that they're going through. And I've never had any issues with not being entertained at all.
Well, if you're in Hong Kong, they tended to do it where it was, they'd have either subtitles or some characters would speak English, some characters would speak in Mandarin or Cantonese.
True.
The
Iron Man experience was a really good example of that, where you had Iron Man speaking in English, and then
Jarvis
was speaking in, I'm assuming it was Cantonese, but it was quite easy to understand what was going on because they were both kind of narrating it, just in the two different languages.
Wow, that answers that question then. So that's at least one big massive worry. Okay, guys, I think I'm going to put a bow on that conversation there. But if you want to find out more about the Asian Pact, particularly I know in their past shows, Kat and Lewis have done trip reports and talked a lot about it. So if you just rewind to 2018, you will be able to find their podcasts in all good podcast catching places. But guys, give yourself a bit of a shout out on social media.
So if you want to listen to any of our other podcasts, you can listen to Diz Down Under. So we're on all the podcast apps. We've got a Facebook page. Just search for Diz Down Under. You should find us. We've also got Unscripted the Film Show, which is our weekly film review show. And every now and again, we've got Tangent City as well, so which is just what it sounds like, pretty much.
A lot of tangents. And we managed to stop going on any tangents today, Lewis. I'm going to chalk that one up to personal growth for you.
Perfect. Right, well, that's it for this week's podcast. We will be back next week with some more fun Disney chat. Till next time, it's a goodbye from me.
And goodbye from us.
Bye.